Well, good evening, everybody. Alan Slaughterzinski for the BREVARD Sports Network, and welcome. We continue with our college football previews, and of course, you just saw 2 days ago Scott Carter from FloridaGators.com as we previewed the Florida Gators. Tonight, we go to the UCF Knights, team near and dear to my heart. Of course, if I had a favorite college football team here in the state of Florida, it would be the Knights, and I can't wait to talk to this guy. I've heard him many, many times here locally on the Mark Moses show, and I just love his knowledge of the Knights football. And when you think of UCF Knights football, this guy has seen and been to it all. Please help me welcome for the first time here on BREVARD Sports Network tonight, Trace Trylko from Sons of UCF podcast. Now, Trace, I don't want to make it just sound like that you're doing a podcast for UCF Knights football. There is so much with this program that you have been involved with. And for those that don't know a lot about Trace Trylko here on the Space Coast, give them a little bit of this unbelievable background you have.
Wow, that's flattering. I appreciate you inviting me in. UCF alum, and when you say I've been around for a lot, that just means I'm older than a lot of folks at this point. I've been covering the Knights since I was sports editor of the Central Florida Future back in the day when the daily newspaper covered UCF, and part of the Sons of UCF now. I am joined by the co-hosts of the Sons of UCF pod, Adam and Mike, on the Sons of UCF live show Thursday nights, streaming on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube from 8 to 9. And I've been to all sorts of games in all sorts of places. Fiesta Bowl, UCF beating Alabama, men's basketball, baseball, you name it. And I'm looking forward to the start of a new football season. Gus Malzahn's second with the Knights.
Yeah, I tell you, it's interesting, Trace, because we have here in Brevard County a guy that's very closely connected to the UCF Knights program and still sits at the top of the record books for a lot of passing categories over at UCF, and that's the head coach for the Cocoa Tigers, Ryan Schneider. And Coach Schneider is always bringing his football team over to UCF, and I know he still very much loves the UCF Knights. Coach Schneider is, we've sat and talked about his days, and he's very fond of them.
Well, and Ryan Schneider is always in that conversation on that Mount Rushmore of UCF quarterbacks, right? You got Dante Culpepper, you got Blake Bortles, you got Mackenzie Melton, and who's that fourth one on there? Ryan Schneider's name comes up. We've been glad to have him on the Sons of UCF to talk about his team and, of course, the Knights.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, Trace, let's just get right into this thing because there's a lot to talk about when it comes to the UCF Knights. First of all, because they are what I think, and Coach Gus Malzahn, a microcosm of really what college football has become with the transfer portal, filling in. I mean, they have really seemed to master this, and I think a lot of it's going to pay off for them this year. But with any football program, obviously we're going into Malzahn's second year. What are your expectations for Malzahn heading into year two?
Well, credit him with taking over a program that has had success over the last couple of seasons and quite a few injuries in his first season, and he pivoted right throughout the year, and he made the most out of it. Got 9 wins, and most importantly, got that Gasparilla Bowl win over Florida. You mentioned you had the Gator guest on recently, and that has just fueled the talk amongst Knight Nation, also UCF's place in that college football landscape, not only on the recruiting trail, but of course in the transfer portal. And Gus Malzahn and his staff have been really good at identifying areas that they'd look for improvements and attracting guys that are looking for that kind of playing time, that opportunity. UCF has a long storied reputation of putting guys into the NFL, and I think these guys see that UCF is on an upswing. The big difference in what may have held UCF back from really going toe-to-toe with Miami, Florida, and Florida State was not being in that power conference. Well, now this is the final season in the American, moving on to the Big 12.
Yeah.
And that little piece right there is very decisive. A kid can win a big title going to UCF, and I think that's making a difference on recruiting trail and as well the portal. Kids know they're going to get an opportunity to come in and play and make a difference for the Knights.
Let me digress for a minute here and just take a step back because you bring up so many great points right there. The first thing I want to ask you about is, it's funny because as we watch the Pac-12 and the conversation come out of the Pac-12 with UCLA and USC leaving, the Pac-12 is dead, it's dying. That was the same conversation we heard a year and a half ago when Oklahoma and Texas were divvying up and leaving the Big 12. But now all of a sudden there seems to be no talk of the Big 12 dying. Instead of becoming that other conference where they could suck some of these schools in with the UCFs of the world and growing this conference again. How excited is Knights Nation to be in their final year in the AAC and then to be heading to the Big 12?
Well, it just puts you in a different level, right? I mean, this strata in college sports, and I'm not a guy that's big on USC and UCLA being in a poorly named conference in the Big Ten that's up to, what is it, 16?
Yeah, 16 teams.
18, going to be 20 at some point.
Right.
This divide between the haves and the have-nots and the SEC stretching to Texas and Oklahoma. At least that's a little bit better than that Tuesday night USC at Rutgers volleyball match in Big Ten play. But for UCF, great opportunity. Now, is it the best geographical fit? Only Cincinnati and West Virginia share the East Coast with UCF. It is a long way to BYU for a road game, of course. But for what it means to move on from a revenue standpoint and be playing some of the bigger names in college football on a more regular basis. And no disrespect, the American has served UCF well, but it is a time to move forward from an ECU, East Carolina, to some of the bigger names in college football and college sports. So Night Nation, very excited because you know what? Being left behind is not a good place to be, as our friends over in Tampa are finding out, as they have not been part of this first wave, this next wave of expansion.
That is absolutely correct. We are here with Trace Trylko from Sons of UCF podcast. And again, when you talk about, if anybody could talk to us about the UCF Knights, no guy better than Trace Trylko. And before I move on, I want to ask you about this. You know, it's funny last year, Trace, as I was watching the college football playoff teams get named. And as I watched Cincinnati get named, I thought, you know, I think there should be some kind of homage paid to Boise State and UCF for trailblazing the way for a team like UCF to get into the college football playoff. I just kind of sat back and chuckled a little bit about that because we had watched for years Boise State not get that respect when that program was built. And, of course, what the Knights have done, what the Knights did over that 2-3 year span there. Did you kind of feel the same way a little bit when you saw that happen last year?
Certainly, and all credit to the roster, a lineup of guys that Cincinnati put out there. I mean, you saw how many guys got drafted in the NFL draft. So this is a talented, quality team. But UCF, Boise State before that, to some degree Houston before that. Yeah. But you know what? I think that's come to the advantage of UCF. I think with a young alumni base, 70,000 plus students, and the presence across Central Florida, I think that chip on the shoulder, the little engine that could, the disrespect, I think it's all played hand in hand. All of those things have had to work together. UCF's moved from, 1AA to, 1A or whatever these FCS, FBS, all of those terms now. It has worked to UCF's advantage. They've always had that chip on the shoulder mentality that there's something else to tackle. And I think that worked well for them across 2017. But to your point, it certainly helped pave the way, Cincinnati's success, and getting the right wins at the right time. Maybe a program or two not getting the right win at the right time, put everything in position. All due congratulations to them. And, of course, a rivalry there as they're also going into the Big 12.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's funny because I don't know that I've seen a university, a football program, do more in 27 years than UCF, Independent, MAC, Conference, American. It's incredible now, the Big 12. It's just incredible how quickly this program has come through the ranks. And I just think, that first Hawaii Bowl appearance back with a Hawaii
back
Bowl
in the day.
Appearance with George O'Leary there. And then you thought this program was in trouble at 0-12 in 2015, and then bang, 2 years later, it's 13-0, and we'll get to that. But let's talk about the 2022 Knights. And I think when you talk about this football team, any football team, the conversation always turns to quarterback. Obviously, Dylan Gabriel is no longer with the program. He's at Oklahoma. And so now you got a fresh, the incumbent was a true freshman last year in Mikey Keene. Who is his competition? Is he going to be the starter?
We're in week 2 of preseason camp, and head coach Gus Malzahn still ducking that question. Scrimmage number 1 Sunday. The next scrimmage scheduled for Saturday if you are to believe what Coach Malzahn is saying, that this is even, that the decision hasn't been made. You do have Mikey Keene, the true freshman last year. He comes in when Dylan Gabriel is injured at Louisville. He guides the team, with ups and downs, but again, got the big win over Florida in the Gasparilla Bowl. But the Knights want competition at the position. They bring an Ole Miss transfer, a multi-star athlete, plays baseball, plays football, John Rice Plumlee, and he wants the job as well. Very versatile, uses his legs, could easily be a 1,000-yard rusher for a team that has a very deep running back room. Mm-hmm. It's not clear yet, and it has divided the fan base. A lot of UCF fans are just hoping that everybody rallies around whoever is eventually named the starter. But when will that be? Will it be after the second scrimmage Saturday? Remains to be seen what Coach Malzahn wants to do there, but said that he wants to name a starter earlier rather than later in preseason camp.
Look, I like Mikey Keene. I do. First of all, I like the fact, if I'm looking at a true freshman quarterback, Trace, I'm looking at his completion ratio. To me, that's huge, right? I mean, he completed 64% of his passes last year. That's pretty good for a true freshman quarterback. What do you look at a true freshman?
Yeah, I mean, and again, the wins. To his credit, he persevered when the team was decimated by injuries on both sides of the ball, and they continued to have the chip on their shoulder that they weren't going to be defeated. And they found ways to win. Oh, and always pretty. Late fourth quarter wins over the likes of East Carolina, even South Florida, games that were much closer than you would have anticipated, but found a way to win. So much to be said about that. And the players really appreciate that and respect that about him. A knock on him, though, of course, how often that he would run, but was it a more conservative game plan for him to reduce mistakes, to keep possession of the ball? I think the fans have been frustrated that he'll throw the ball away, but would you rather have him throw it away as a true freshman or try and force a pass that gets pick six? So he didn't make a lot of those mistakes across the season, but now how does he grow from what he learned and what he accomplished in season 1 to season 2? And you just got to go back, though, that Plumlee fits that mold of what Coach Gus Malzahn likes in a quarterback. He's got the true freshman Thomas Castellanos, the Georgia recruit, that is there as well, can run, can pass. That's the kind of guy that he likes at quarterback. So Mikey put on some weight in the offseason. 10 pounds, mainly muscle right there, and he's been working with his wide receivers. New summer protocols and rules allow them to lob the ball around and have coaches present. And what has he learned? And how can he move the offense? And how much does he need to do? If, again, that 65% completion percentage, when you have the running backs that UCF has, you're going to be able to control the clock and run the ball. Isaiah Bowser back for another year. When healthy, he's a bowling ball out there. He knocks guys over. He's a dominating force. And there are other guys, very deep running back room. Does Mikey Keene simply need to be a game manager who can, with talented wide receivers, complete a pass, keep the chains moving? UCF could have a potent offense, and it's his job to lose, right? He comes into it after having gone 9-4 with the Knights in his first season.
You mentioned Isaiah Bowser in that backfield and big and bruising, and, of course, durability as well. Johnny Richardson back, who led the team last year. I love this backfield. I really do, and I love the depth. And, again, durability, yes, but I think there's a lot the Knights can accomplish with this backfield.
Yeah, I asked Coach Malzahn during AAC Media Day, what's the ideal number of carries for Isaiah Bowser? This is a guy who showed that in a game he got stronger quarter after quarter and was just a force in the fourth quarter of games. And, they're going to be smart about how they use him. They're going to use him situationally. That's what Coach Malzahn is saying. Hey, if they need to give him 30 carries, they're going to give him 30 carries if that's what it takes. But if they can limit some carries, especially in a home opener September 1st against South Carolina State, a week later you got Louisville, that you may be more judicious. They didn't work him a lot during spring camp. They've been wise about how they're utilizing him. He's practiced yoga, he said, during AAC Media Day to be in better condition and better shape to survive and thrive over a very grueling 12-game schedule for the Knights.
The receiving core equally as impressive to me. I mean, Amari Johnson, Kobe Hudson, the Auburn transfer that's coming in. Talk a little bit about the receiving core.
Well, it begins with Ryan O'Keefe, who had a standout year in 2021.
Yeah.
But you mentioned they've gotten some transfers in, and that adds to the mix. There's some competition there for the other wide receiver spots, which also points to what you may be going to next. Offensive line. Are they going to give Mikey or John Rice Plumlee time to find these wide receivers? You've also got Kimora Gamble, the tight end transfer from the University of Florida. So some competition is there as well there. They're bringing in a lot of big names from big programs that are looking for opportunity to put up some big stats. How do you feed everybody in this offense? Will the line be durable enough that keeps everything moving there? That's also a plus back to John Rice Plumlee is that, in that Mackenzie Milton fashion, when that line may break down, they may not be able to sustain something. He has the elusiveness to create a big play. Remains to be seen whether Mikey can take advantage of a situation in that same way.
If I want experience anywhere, I want it up front. I want, my returning starters, I want it up front. And again, I think you got another transfer up front on the offensive line coming in this year that's got some time in the ACC. Talk about that offensive line because I think you've got some depth there as well.
I think there's more depth than there has been over the last couple of years. It's finding the right pieces. You mentioned from the ACC, Ryan Swoboda.
Right?
Yeah, he's a big guy, 6'10", I think he is.
Wow.
So 6'9", 6'10", guy. So he's big. And they lost a couple of pieces. Cole Schneider now with the Green Bay Packers. Marcus Tatum on the offensive line. So finding the right mix, finding that two deep at the various positions on the line. I think we're going to have to see how that group comes together. But when you look at it from the position battles, but there's more depth. But you got to make the right decision as a coaching staff. You may have the right guy, but if you don't make the right start with a quarterback, and Coach Malzahn has been saying all through his media availabilities during this preseason camp, it's these guys coming in and everybody coming together as a team, that chemistry forming amongst one another. Certainly deciding the quarterback and knowing who your leader is going to be behind center would make that a lot easier. But the pieces are there, and the Knights have more depth. They certainly could do something on offense.
I can't wait to watch what this offense does this season. And again, I think you hit the nail on the head there and it's a good problem to have, but you hope it's managed correctly, right? In who gets the ball, when, how do you make everybody happy, and picking the right pieces up front. Because with all of that said, if Gus Malzahn can hit on this, man, they're going to score a lot of points this year, Trace.
They have the potential to, and I know we'll shift over to the defensive side of the ball. The Knights made great strides under first-year defensive coordinator Travis Williams. If they have a stout defense, you don't even need to score a lot of points, but the potential is there that they'll score points.
Let's talk about that defense because you look at, I thought a couple of years ago or 2 years ago or 18 months ago when the talk was that UCF was going to the Big 12, I thought, well, that's fitting. That's a Big 12 defense they got. But not so last year. Not so. Especially in that secondary. That is a great secondary. And I think it could step into the Big 12 right now and be the best secondary. So talk about what Travis Williams has done with this defense, the aggressiveness that we saw from it last year, and how he builds on that in this season.
Yeah, big change from what the Knights had experienced the last couple of seasons. I thought what you just said there about they were just ready for the Big 12 in a 52-42 kind of shootout kind of game. But they showed during 2021, market improvement over the previous season. Different staff, of course, under Josh Heupel. And, the way that was set up with Randy Shannon as defensive coordinator, Josh Heupel as head coach, there was a divide there. You've heard the players subsequently speak about how it's more unified and one team. And Travis Williams, T-Will, high-energy guy who got the most out of his defense. Lockdown corners, I don't know that you're going to be able to throw on the Knights. Question mark remains about the linebacker core. Tatum Bethune off to Florida State, some other changes. Not a lot of depth there. They brought in several new guys. How those guys gel together, that remains in the minds of fans the big question mark on defense. Looks pretty good at the line. And, big boy football decided on both the offensive and defensive lines. But there's some question marks that may take us a while to see how they get answered. Successfully remains to be seen, but how it gets answered, who fits in, joining Jeremiah, Jean Baptiste, and some others there that they fit into that linebacker core. That's
That
a
would
big
be
question.
that would be the only thing that would scare me, would be that teams could control the football a little bit against this defense and running the football, because obviously that linebacking core is a big, that's how you stop the rushing attack, and that's the only concern I have. But again, on 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, if they can force a lot of those situations, one of the biggest things that UCF had constant issues with in the past was getting off the field on 3rd down. And with this secondary, I don't see that as an issue. So hopefully they'll get that linebacking situation figured out. And when for me, we're talking about the offense, the defense, and I also, look, I'm high on the Knights, and I'm high on the Knights for another reason. The schedule. I think it's 7 home games this year. The Knights, that bounce house, that place is unbelievably electric. I think it's one of the most underrated home field advantages in college football. I mean, I've literally been in that facility when it sways, rocks, and people up in Maryland don't believe me when I tell them, but it does. Talk about the benefit, having that schedule this year.
Several things about the schedule. You mentioned the 7 home games, and the Knights have been a force in the bounce house. Sellout crowds, loud student section. It is an intimidating atmosphere. Look no more than to that game day atmosphere against Cincinnati in 2018. Deciding factor, back-to-back false starts by Cincinnati and put them in a hole, and the crowd was a big factor. 7 home games, 2 games in the state of Florida, at FAU and Boca Raton, and Thanksgiving weekend, Black Friday, perhaps Saturday, still to be decided. War on I-4 rivalry against South Florida in Tampa. So you're talking about 9 out of 12. You don't leave the state of Florida. Just 3 road games: Tulane, Memphis, East Carolina. By no means easy, but you do like the way the schedule sets up there. Also, every team the Knights lost to in 2021, the return game is in Orlando. So they get an opportunity to avenge those 4 losses on their schedule in 21. That being Louisville, a big one on there, Cincinnati, Navy, and who's the other one I'm leaving out? But those are 3. I'm forgetting who the other one is in there. But
the schedule is up on the screen there. But we're here with Trace Trylko from Sons of UCF podcast, and so much more with the UCF Knights. Trace just simply knows this football team up one side and back down the other. And so when all is said and done, and you look at this team this year, and Gus Malzahn in his 2nd year, and there could be quarterback, linebacker, but I think once we settle on a quarterback, I think that offense will be fine. I think this linebacking core gets figured out. Where do you see this? I know they were picked 3rd in the AAC this year. With the assumption of health, is that where you see them?
I had a vote in that AAC poll, and Knights 3rd. But when you look at the way the first place votes were distributed, Houston avoids both Cincinnati and UCF. So opportunity there for them to get themselves in position for an AAC championship game. Cincinnati loses a lot on both sides of the ball. They finished just a point behind Houston. They were in 2nd. I don't know. I think you could put the Knights reasonably 2nd or 3rd, but again, all bunched up. But I think those 3 teams, right? Ironically, the 3 that are in their last year in the AAC that are moving on to the Big 12, I think they're going to be right in the mix. There are a couple other teams, and SMU certainly remains a threat. That was another team that UCF lost to on the road last year that they get at home. Can the Knights go perfect? That is an unreasonable expectation that fans set. 2017 certainly paved the way, and then that long win streak for the Knights. But you like their chances in the home games, but tough home games. Louisville, that was not an easy game, and that was more than just a loss. That was they got beat up. Yeah, well, they got beat up in that game and sustained quite a few injuries that impacted the way the rest of the season went. But you got Louisville at home. That'll be a crazy night, a Friday night game, a loud crowd. Cincinnati, that's not even so much about this year, but building that rivalry as both schools move on to the Big 12. Luke Fickell and his staff have done an excellent job of securing that Ohio talent and really building a winner in Cincinnati. Perfect. I think that's tough to say. I see some losses on that schedule, but that many losses, considering they went 9-4 last year with as many injuries and as much turnover in the roster, and Mikey Keene for the better part of the season at quarterback,
Yeah.
hard to see him with 4 losses.
No.
But also hard to see him at perfect. If I had to say, I'd say, maybe a 2-loss season, something on the road. I don't lose much at home, certainly over the last several years. But, maybe Louisville. Maybe that's still a tough one. That's game 2. They're not going to learn a lot against South Carolina State. That's your real test. That's a tough game. And we still don't know at this point in preseason camp which one of these guys is going to emerge as quarterback. But Louisville's going to bring it. It's going to be a loud night. So that's a potential loss on the schedule, and something of Memphis, East Carolina, Tulane trip up the nights on the road.
All right, I like it. I think it's a reasonable expectation, and while I'd love to see them in the Cotton Bowl, I'll take a ride down to Boca Raton if I have to. I got no problem with that as well. But
even when you say that, that's going to be a big difference between the American Athletic Conference and the Big 12.
Right, exactly.
The quality of the bowls.
Yep.
For a UCF fan, it's, you better win it all to get into one of those New Year's Six games, or your best options are the Gasparilla Bowl or the Boca Raton Bowl. But now in the Big 12, the bowl tie-ins are much better. Also interesting that in this final year in the American, the best team in the league hosts the American Athletic Conference Championship game. So an opportunity for Knights to do that. Of course, when they moved to Big 12, you got a neutral site game for that Big 12 championship. So that's another storyline to watch this year.
I tell you what, it's a perfect segue to this, because as a member of the media here in Florida for the last 8-9 years, and for the greater part of the last 20, a lot of people always ask me, what is the best baseball, hockey, football game you've ever covered? The greatest college football game I've ever covered in my life, and this is a true statement, was the 2017 AAC championship game, because of the storylines, the Frost storyline, the breaking news during the game that he was going in Nebraska, the 62-55 from Snelson's pass to put UCF 7-0, to Trey's interception at the end, to me was the greatest college football game I've ever had the honor to be at. Now I know that there was the one where the Knights went way down to Memphis and came way back, but to me, that 2017 AAC championship game, A, was unexpected, B, the result. I mean, 2 years prior they were, over, and here we are playing in this game, so many twists and turns. And finally, at one point, even as a member of the media, you just have to put everything down and watch and enjoy what you were seeing, because I've never been a part of anything like that in person. All the UCF football games you've seen, what's the one or two that stick out to you?
That is certainly one of them. I go back a while, so you got to realize that this time in the program, when they went to Alabama and beat Alabama, I know that wasn't a good Alabama team, and it's certainly not the Alabama we know today, but it's still the SEC Alabama Crimson Tide. It's still the Bear Bryant Alabama Crimson, even though he wasn't there. That was a big win that stood the test for UCF for many years. And I was living and working in Alabama, went there with buddies that were Alabama fans. So there were bragging rights. Of course, they haven't played since in football. So I like to remind my friends, 1-0 against mighty Alabama. The Black Friday game against South Florida, that Mike Hughes return, the electrifying return. You don't get to some of these other moments. And certainly Fiesta Bowl, beating Auburn, Gus Malzahn and the Auburn Tigers. I mean, you said it, 2015, but to go back to me on campus as a student at UCF in the early 1990s, when you're playing the Youngstown States of the world, to see that you're in Atlanta in that Peach Bowl, and of course we don't know at that moment that then athletic director Danny White's going to say national champions, win them all, national champions. Right. But how that continues to fuel the narrative, that still comes up, right? Some 5 years later. But, it's 5 years in the rear view, too. And Gus Malzahn's trying to move past that. It is a new era for UCF. Final year in the American across all sports and making that move to the Big 12. But, they'd like to leave this league, as would Cincinnati, as would Houston, as champs of the American. You got a lot of other schools in that league that want to send them out not champions, kick them out of the league as not champions of this league. But you're 5 years beyond that 2017 season. But back to your question, there are a lot of those big moments. But Auburn, that win, beating Alabama, and the Memphis game you mentioned, at Cincinnati in that game when they had the game day. That was a satisfying, very satisfying win. So some of those, and of course, hey, beat the Florida Gators. Little bragging rights that have carried on here all 2022 and have been great for recruiting and morale of the program, dumping on the Gators a little bit.
Well, how about this? Alabama, Florida, and they've beaten Georgia.
Yeah, that was decidedly not a pretty game.
No,
I was at that game. That was not but that was a big deal in the moment,
right? But you'll take it, I mean, it's when you look at the Knights' record against the mighty SEC. It's like a little ball that comes off the bat. It looks like a line drive at the end of the year in the scorebook. You know what I mean? So you'll definitely take it. Trace, I tell you, as we wrap up here, I can't thank you enough for taking this time. My apologies for yesterday. Vieira Century Little League, man, they went on quite a run. And thank you for understanding. And I'd love to do this again because your knowledge of UCF football is at the top there. And I think you're spot on just everything that you're talking about here tonight.
Well, would love it. I have enjoyed the conversation, and always good to talk with you and the folks in Brevard County. And invite you, if you haven't, check us out. TwoKnightsMedia.com is the website. And Sons of UCF, Adam and Mike do a podcast early in the week, drops typically on Tuesdays. And then the three of us come together live Thursday nights, most Thursday nights, unless you got a head-to-head with a game, 8 to 9, streams on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Sons of UCF, wherever you find downloadable content, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow on Twitter, all of those great places. My Twitter is @Seinpez, SEINPEZ. You'll see me posting some clips during the open availabilities of the football practices. So if you want to dissect, like the Zapruder film, the handoffs and the throws, and try and get an eye on who you think is going to be emerging at quarterback, give me a follow on Twitter, and then study all of that, all of those 10-second clips to see if you know a little bit more than Coach Gus Malzahn and his staff.
Trace is a great follow because he puts up some great clips about. You're like, where is he now? Yeah, you do some good stuff there. So I do appreciate, and all of that information that Trace just gave you has been flashing up on the screen throughout the course of this interview. And once again, Trace, I can't thank you enough. So for Trace Trylko, I'm Alan Slaughter-Zinski. Thanks for joining us here tonight on the Brevard Sports Network. Have a great night. And as always, everybody, make it a sports night.